I felt this absolutely light up my triceps. So if you haven't tried this, definitely give it a go. How's it guys, Peter here. Today we'll be discussing a video by Will Tennyson where he collabs with none other than Jeff Nippard to go over Jeff's favorite exercises for each body part. So in this video, Jeff Nippard goes over 3 criteria for an exercise to make the list. The first one is high stretch and high tension. This one at this point in time, I can't 100% agree with. I think there's a great potential for this to be a magical miracle for us to become wham. But at this point in time, I think based on the evidence, which is highly flawed, really short studies, really small sample sizes, and they don't account for genetic differences, and the only study that does comes back as inconclusive, I don't think for now that should be a massive criteria. I think we can use it as a tool, but not base the full exercises around it. The second one is potential for overload. So yes, we definitely need to be able to overload these exercises. That's a key in terms of building muscle. And the third one is it must feel good on the joints, which yeah, it needs to. We need to stay injury free. We need to keep our bodies happy. And if we enjoy what we do, we're gonna get in there more often and do it. Right, so on to exercise number 1 for the legs, especially the quads. And Jeff starts off with the Smith machine squat and doing some stretch range partials in this exercise. Now this is brilliant for Jeff, but if you look at Will, not so much. So what's the difference? Will's got slightly longer femurs relative to the rest of his body. Jeff's are slightly shorter, therefore his hips and lower back won't be in as much strain on a Smith machine squat. If you look at Jeff doing the movement in the video, it looks pretty perfect. However, if we jump over to Will and watch Will do the exercise, he almost looks uncomfortable, and that's probably because he is. Will's got the slightly longer femurs, then that will put a bit of pressure on the lower back and not allow the hips to free up. So how can we make this work? Because it is a great exercise for building muscle. All we need to do, and it's really simple, is put a wedge under the heel, be that a bumper plate, be that 2 plates, be it a single plate if you sort of mixed between the two. Anything like that will take the pressure off and put you in a similar position to a hack squat. So top tier exercise, really rate this. I've been doing this for quite a while, and yes, you can do it in the stretch partial range to build a bit of extra muscle. Right, on to exercise number 2, and Jeff has opted for the seated hamstring curl, and he explains this quite well as to why he wants more of a stretch. The only caveat is sometimes for some individuals, a seated hamstring curl may, now I'm saying may because it's not a definite, be less of a stretch than a laying hamstring curl depending on the V shape of your laying hamstring curl. Yes, if you're dead flat, then a seated one will always have, but if you've got quite a big angle, the lying hamstring curl may just be able to give you more of a stretch, simply because the hamstring is not determined by the angle of your hip, it's more, or the hip to the pelvis. So if you're seated and your lower back is rounded and your pelvis is tilted under, so tilted back posteriorly, then your hamstring is going to be in a shorter position than if you were laying with a forwardly tilted or anteriorly tilted pelvis. To put more of a stretch on the hamstring muscle, we need to anteriorly tilt the pelvis rather than focus on if we're laying or sitting. Now, Jeff pointed out in the video really nicely with Will that if he comes forward on the hamstring curl, that will be more of a stretch. However, you can see Will coming forward with his lumbar spine and not coming forward with his pelvis, therefore not changing the stretch position that much. He still feels it there, but he could improve that slightly more by tilting his pelvis forward to get more of a stretch. The next video on the list needs no introduction. It is an incline barbell chest press. Now, need I say more, this has definitely well earned its place on the list. And Jeff, interestingly enough, speaks of a study whereby they compare that movement with a flat bench press, and actually they found it hits the lower and mid chest the same, but the upper chest fibers more. Now, he does say that is one study. So again, really good potential for extra muscle building if this is true. And yeah, everyone loves an incline chest press. The only caveat I would say with this is what happens when you load the flat bench more than the incline, because let's be real, we can all load the flat bench slightly heavier, so not leave the flat bench out. But yeah, if I was going to pick one, it would definitely be the incline chest press. So because the chest is the muscle we all want to grow, Jeff's included 2 exercises for this muscle group. Now the second one is a seated cable fly in the stretch position, so pull the chair right forward so you can get a good stretch on the pecs. This is brilliant, it feels great in the stretch position. However, having to drive your bench halfway around the gym to find a cable, that's both are free in a busy gym, you won't be a fan favorite. So here's some alternatives. If you want to mimic the strength curve where the stretch it's the hardest, then just do a flat bench fly. That's perfect. However, if you want a more even strength curve through the range of movement, then you can go onto the pec deck machine, set it up so you can still get that massive stretch. You can do that. and then you'll have more even strength curve as you complete the rep. Right, so for the next exercise, Jeff goes on to any horizontal row that is chest supported. Now I really like this, and I like the fact that he's going into a stretch position, but only as a back exercise. Now it's fantastic as an overall back exercise. However, if you want to isolate your lats, as most of us do, I wouldn't say this is the best option. Yes, taking your shoulders right forward into protraction will put an extra bit of stretch on the lats, but what it does is it puts an even greater stretch on your rhomboids and mid-traps, so they will take over the movement a little bit. It's also really good at including your erector spinae muscle group, which run up either side of the spine. Now I found that this really did get my rhomboids and mid-traps. I didn't get too much lat activation, but I did feel my erector spinae group go, especially up on my lower back, which is not a bad thing. We need to load them. So as an overall back exercise, I would highly recommend it. As an isolated lat exercise, I wouldn't recommend doing this. I would recommend doing it with a bit more control and not worrying about that over protraction of the shoulder blades. So the next exercise is a vertical pull. Now Jeff does give two options to Will, and I fully understand why Will goes for the lat pull down over the pull up. Much easier to overload, and you can feel it a lot better in your back. I also like the fact that Jeff says if he goes wide for the horizontal row, he'll go narrow for the vertical pull. So yeah, that's absolutely fine, perfect, definitely do it. But I would say mix up your grips a little bit on both of them. And if you have the opportunity to use 1 week a narrow grip or 2-3 weeks a narrow grip, then go to a wide grip to mix it up a bit, definitely do so. Perfect exercises and really good technique in all of them. So when it comes to the back, I feel like Jeff's missed out on a couple of things. Now, yes, we've put one muscle for the chest, one muscle for the back. However, the chest is 1 or 2 muscles, if we look at it, comprised of 3 different fiber angles, where the back has got so many more muscles. And I feel like to complete your back training, we need to incorporate 2 more things. One is straight arm scapular strength, and my go-to for this would be a cable straight arm pull down with a rope, or if you have got the really long handles, that's also fine. The second is you want to work your rotator cuff. Now, yes, this is not going to give you much mass and size to your back, but if you really want that shredded back look, you need to be able to see your rotator cuff, and this will help massively. So any form of shoulder external rotation, so looking at a face pull with external rotation, either with a cable, or my favorite variant is actually with a TRX, and I've got a short up on my channel if you want to go check that out. So for the next muscle group, we're onto the shoulders, and Jeff uses a variant of a cable lateral raise, which actually, I love it. I tried it, I can really feel my lateral delts exploding with this one. I didn't think I would like it because of the fact that you've got to cross your body. Now what he says about the cable is spot on. You hear so many people online talking about, oh, cables have an even strength curve. Jeff knows, the other Jeff from Athlete X knows, and so do I, that cables do not have an even strength curve. The cable strength curve is hardest when the movement is at 90 degrees to the cable. So similar to gravity with a dumbbell, there is a strength curve, and Jeff makes use of this really well. What he does to get it is he sets the cable at the same height as your hand when you're standing by your side, reaching across, grabbing the cable, and going into that lat raise really hits the lateral delts perfectly. I will be adding this in every time I do lateral raises on the cable. What you can do, and I actually saw it on TikTok, or my girlfriend saw it on TikTok and then sent it to me, was use your lifting strap. And if you watch me in the video, you basically set it up around the handle, and what you can do is stick your hand through it, and that just goes above your wrist, and that can take any forearm flick out of the movement and really light up the lateral delts. And you can also connect to it better with your brain when you do this. Just a quick pro tip, but really love this exercise. Top tier. Well done, Jeff. So next up, we've got the rear delts. Now, if you want your boulder shoulders to look like pumpkins ready for Halloween, you need to train the rear delts. Really undertrained muscle of the upper body, although that is changing because more people are starting to talk about it. I really like what Jeff does on the machine, where he sits sideways to get a greater stretch. I really felt my rear delts light up. However, my machine was a bit annoying. I couldn't do full range of movement because the machine ran out of range at that point. And I have one little negative about this one. So in all the other stretch positions, I was able to push really similar weights to what I would push in a normal range of movement. However, for this one, I probably had to take around 30 to 40% of my usual working weight off. So I would have to beg the question, is it worth dropping the weight in order to get the stretch, or is it better to go with a heavier weight and not have that stretch position? I'll leave that one for you guys to figure out because there's no sound evidence for either yet. So next up, we're onto the guns and what Jeff calls the Bayesian bicep curl. Now, I know this is a standing cable bicep curl in a stretch position. I do really like the fact that similarly to the lateral delt, he raises up the cable so that it's going to be harder in the fully stretched position, which is perfect for his criteria in this video, but as we know, that does have flaws. Nevertheless, I felt the same restriction on this one as I felt with my rear delts. I had to reduce the weight significantly. Now, yes, you got a better stretch, and actually what he says about rotating your arm outwards slightly is counterintuitive because that takes the stretch off of the long head and more onto the short head. So if you want a fuller stretch on the long head, keep your hand in a neutral, arm in a neutral position rather than rotating it outwards. However, this is a great exercise to add to your bicep exercise. If you were to give me what bicep exercise would you choose, it would be Old Faithful. Really heavy standing barbell bicep curl, or if you really lopsided, one stronger than the other, then go for dumbbells. But I think the benefit that you get from a stretch position in this exercise does not outweigh the extra weight you can load on a barbell curl. So next up, we're onto the triceps, and Jeff's picked 2 exercises for this, and he's spot on when saying, yes, if you want more of a stretch, your arm needs to be above the head, especially for the long head of the tricep. Doesn't apply for the other 2 heads. And then if you want a peak contraction, we need to be in shoulder extension, so elbow behind the body. First up, he goes into a standing overhead tricep extension with a cable down at the bottom. Again, really good for the strength curve, higher strength difficulty at the higher stretch position. I mean, I hope most of you are doing this already, but yeah, top tier exercise, and I would choose it. Again, you can load up the weights here, so no problems with that. The second one is one I've never done before. Now, yes, I do kickbacks. You can watch my videos. I recommend doing kickbacks so we complete the strength curve. However, I've never done them the way Jeff does them in this video, and that is leaning back with your arm behind you instead of bending forward with your arm up. Now, what that does is, again, just shift the difficulty slightly to where it's actually more mid-range here, but it's in slightly more stretched position than when you're on a normal kickback, because at a kickback, the hardest part is right at the end, so in the fully contracted position. I felt this absolutely light up my triceps. So if you haven't tried this, definitely give it a go. And if you haven't seen either of these 2 guys, go check out their channels. Really top information from both of them. And I mean, let's be real, Will's one of the funniest YouTubers on the planet. So if you haven't come across them, go check them out. So what do I think of this video as a whole? I think it's fantastic. Now, he's picked some really great exercises, and I hope most of you are doing all of these anyway. Maybe not in the exact way, but in some form. And if you aren't doing the lateral raises in this manner, definitely include them in your next shoulder workout. Now, would these all be my absolute first choice for each body part? Possibly not. Some of them will be, definitely, as you would have heard in the video, and some of them won't be, and I feel like I've given valid reasons why. If you disagree or have any other favorite exercises that Jeff has left out, drop them down in the comment section below, and I'll be sure to give them a try and report back to you. Thank you very much for watching, and until then, I'll see you in the next one.